2NURFM.com, a broadcast service of the University of Newcastle.
And joining us this morning, Dr. Jim Jones from the University of Newcastle to talk politics as we do every Tuesday. Jim, good morning.
Morning, Meryl.
Jim, what's wrong with our Senate? What's wrong with it currently? Why do they want to reform it?
Well, I don't know that I would think there's a lot wrong with the Senate, but the government and many of the other politicians do. And the big issue is really the proliferation of what they call the micro parties, the really small parties with very little, shall we say, national support or even state-based support.
So these are the Automotive Enthusiasts Party. These are those quite obscure, very pointed parties that perhaps have one policy or have a single platform.
Well, they get elected with a very small number of votes, and I think that is seen as not being particularly representative, which is not to say that the individuals concerned don't do a good job. The issue is really around representativeness, and if we're to be really blunt about it for the government, it's around having all these fractious people in the Senate that they can't control and get their way.
And it distills the power down, doesn't it?
Well, it makes it difficult for them to get material through the Senate. It means that they have to negotiate a bit, which, you know, from my perspective, if they have to negotiate a little, it means they have to think about what they're putting up to the Senate, and it means they're open to a little bit of scrutiny, and they might have to sort of water down what they're doing a little bit to make it a bit more palatable.
So it's almost a bit of a double-edged sword. In one way, it's not representative of the broader population. But on the other side, it does encourage more debate. It does encourage questioning of those bills that get pushed to the Senate that perhaps once upon a time would have been forced through on numbers because, you know, people had been elected. Now there's a lot more negotiation, argy-bargy.
Yes, and the two major parties are, in many respects, agreed that the minor parties are a pain in the backside and they would like to get rid of them. The idea of having a more diverse Senate is certainly good from a democratic perspective, but the major parties aren't interested in that. They're interested in what they can do when they're in government, and so the Senate has always been seen as somewhat obstructionist, or in Paul Keating's famous phrase, unrepresentative swill.
Yes.
And it's, in terms of representativeness, it's got, shall we say, it's diminished a lot because of the sort of very small percentage of votes that allow the people in the micro parties to get in.
So what are the proposed reforms?
Well, basically, they're proposing above the line that the Senate has the sort of above the line where you vote. Put in number one for the party you want, and then their preferences are automatically distributed according to what they've lodged with the Electoral Commission. Or you can vote below the line and number the squares consecutively. And
create a huge queue at the polling booth and people get antsy, but that's your prerogative to do that should you choose.
Yeah. Now what they're proposing is that you can number more than one square above the line, up to 6, that the preferences for above the line will no longer be allowed. They won't have the list voting that they've had in the past. And below the line, you can have between, I think they're proposing something where between 3 and 6 mistakes before your vote might be rendered invalid.
So when you say informal mistakes, as in you've crossed out and changed the number, is that what you mean?
Yes, or if the ordering isn't quite how it should be, so that they will allow you some mistakes before. Yes, I think that's probably correct, that if you've crossed something out, that will not count as an informal vote.
Okay. So just run that by me again one more time quickly. Above the line, we used to only mark one box.
Yes.
And then if that's, should you choose, and the parties would take care of it, however they've swung their deals. Now they're saying we would be able to mark 1 to 6 or thereabouts.
Yes, 1 to 6, and the parties won't be able to do their deals because the preferences will no longer be automatic. Your preferences will be what counts. So if you put 1 for party X, 2 for party Z, 3 for party Z, 1 and 100, whatever it happens to be, that will be the preference list ordering for your vote.
Okay. Now, how will this trigger the double dissolution?
Well, the basic issue will be simply that it won't get through the Senate, and the government will then re-lodge it with the Senate after 3 months, and then they will have a trigger for double dissolution. The basic principle here is that the Senate has to reject legislation twice. within a fixed period or after a fixed period, and then the Prime Minister has the trigger. He can go to the Governor-General and say, well, I can't get this legislation through. It's important to the government's reform agenda, and I'd like a double dissolution.
Okay, so where are we in terms of this Senate reform now?
It's before what they call, it's gone to committee, and they're now sort of looking at the detail, and the Senate will then, it'll come back to the Senate in a legislative form, and then the Senate will then turn around and go yay or nay in terms of the party distribution of support or not. So
that'll be the first time the Senate has seen it, won't it? Or is that the second? That's what I'm interested in.
I think it will be the first. Won't be the first time because it's gone to the Senate and it's now gone to a committee of the Senate.
So this is the critical point.
And it's, I think that's what they call the second reading debate.
Yes.
So it goes outside the chamber to another chamber. They consider it in committee. It then comes back with all the sort of
amendments and changes,
and stuff,
yes.
And then the Senate considers it again, and then it goes back to the government, either passed or rejected. At the moment, it looks like the Labor Party and the micro parties are going to oppose it, and the government and the Greens are going to support it because the Greens see an opportunity here to eliminate some of their competition, and maybe they're signalling that, hey, we're a mainstream party now, and that is a gamble involved there because they may alienate the people who support them because they don't see them as as mainstream in the same sense that Labor or Liberal or Nationals are seen as mainstream, in which they're old hat yesterday's parties who aren't in tune with what's happening. Whether the Greens lose that particular edge, I mean, it's a double edge because for people sort of more in the mainstream in their voting intentions, they see the Greens as perhaps just a little further to the left than they would prefer. Just
before we say goodbye to you, do you have a hunch? We're chatting with Dr. Jim Joes about politics as we do every Tuesday, thanks to our sponsor, Sugar Valley Lifestyle Estate, West Wallsend. Do you have a hunch on a date for a poll? You're allowed to be wrong on this, Jim. It's just a hunch. No one's going to hold it to you.
Well, if they go for a double dissolution, they have to sort of try and get it done in July in order to capitalise on it. I think when all things are considered, Malcolm Turnbull's just as likely to step back and say, I'm just going to let things play out until around September and go probably, at the 3-year mark. I think he can afford it despite the sort of the downturn in his, polling at the moment. That's just sort of the honeymoon period is now over and we're down to a bit more serious political argy-bargy. But I think he can afford to sort of allow people to speculate and carry on and just simply keep above the fray.
Excellent. Dr. Jim Joes for Politics every Tuesday, 2NURFM. Thanks, Jim. Have a great week and we'll touch base, maybe take a look at those polls next week.
Yep. Thank you, Meryl.